Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us here today for our 10,000 Copies Office Hour event on Engineering Career Conversations with OSCO Construction Group. My name is Natasha Rigo, and I'm the Young Alumni Coordinator with UMB's Alumni Office. And we're so thrilled to have you here today, so thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon to join us for this session. This afternoon's webinar is actually our second event with our 10,000 Copies platform. And so we're really excited to be hosting it with some of the folks who are working at OSCO Construction Group. UNB and OSCO actually have a strategic partnership, which means that we work together on a lot of different initiatives, from research and recruitment to education for our students in terms of employment. And so this session is another great opportunity to work together on this. So most of you joining us today are members of our 10,000 Copies platform. And we just wanted to first off say a huge thank you for being part of this initiative. Whether you're a student who is looking for mentorship from our alumni, or you're an alum who has volunteered to give back to support our students and our new graduates, we really appreciate you being part of this program. And as a way to say thank you, we really want to offer these exclusive opportunities for you where we can get together in small groups and chat about various different career industries like engineering. So thank you for being here. And for those of you, I know there might be a few here who are not 10,000 Copies members. We do encourage you to check out our website if you'd like to learn more about this program. I'll pop the link in the chat, but it is unb.ca/10,000 copies. And essentially it's a virtual networking platform. So every month you'll be introduced to either a fellow alumni or a student or a new graduate based on what your career goals and your interests are. So definitely check it out if you're looking for something to get involved in. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started today with our panelists. We are here for about an hour for this session, and we are going to start by hearing the career stories from our fantastic alumni, but we are also going to have a Q&A period at the end of the session. So I know a lot of you pre-submitted some questions to us, which was great, but we also encourage you to pop any questions you have throughout the event in the little Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, so don't be shy. We'd love to hear any questions that you might have for us. So with all that said, it is my great pleasure to introduce our first alumni speaker, and that speaker is Rebecca Patterson. So Rebecca graduated from UNB in 2002 with her degree in civil engineering, and she is now working as the Eastern District Manager for Stresscon Limited. So we're so thrilled to have Rebecca here with us today, and we're really looking forward to hearing about her career journey and the obstacles that she's overcome in the engineering industry. So thank you so much, Rebecca, for being here with us, and I'm going to hand the floor over to you.
Good day, everybody. As I was just introduced, I'm Rebecca Patterson, and I have worked for the past 20 years towards my current position. And one of the things that when we did our pre-setup yesterday, just to make sure that everything digitally would be working, I kind of asked, what would you like me to spotlight? Because 20 years has been painful and it's been joyous, but what do you want me to focus on? And one of the things that was brought to my attention was that 10,000 Copies was looking for a lot of interest in female leadership and in engineering. And I thought, oh, I'm in leadership. I'm an engineer and I'm a female, so I think I can do this. I think I can do this for the audience. It's funny because I look back after being posed some of the questions and I think about my career in a slightly different manner. I was in engineering because, like everybody, I was good at math and physics, and anything subjective didn't seem to align with me as well. And while going through engineering, I didn't come from money. I had a very good upbringing, but I had to work 2 and 3 jobs to get myself through my degree. And I waitressed, I tutored, I swept driveways if I had to, and I didn't attain any proper engineering experience until my last summer, partially due to employment restrictions in terms of I just needed something that made me a lot more money for the first few years so I could pay for the degree. And then in the last end, I really wanted to get a better idea of what I was wanting to get out of my degree and my future. And I had applied everywhere. And all of the guys in my class, they all had jobs for the Was I unmuted? Did they hear anything? I was muted.
Yeah, you only cut out for a second there, Rebecca, so you're good.
Okay, I'm not touching anything, so I don't know why that happened. So all the guys in my class, they all had summer experience. I was still, waitressing until I found that job. And I got a call from Melissa Conley at OSCO Construction. She was their HR manager at the time. And she said, I have an opening for an interview today. Are you available? And I had plans and I said, yes, I'm available. And she said, do you have steel toe work boots? And I said, yes. So I bought them on my way into town and I arrived at the interview, and I must have had a good one because she said, go over to the plant, meet with a man named Hugo Bursich. And if he likes you, he's probably going to put you to work today. And if he doesn't, he'll probably just walk away from you. And I worked the rest of the day. So things went well enough. And I'd have to say, just understanding where my end game was part of my behavior in those moments, when getting a call that you needed and wanted and being able to just kind of say, I'm dropping everything else because this is most important to me, was part of who I was along the road. And the next year I graduated, 2002, as previously discussed. And I would say in January, I started looking for jobs, and I had gone through the typical career fair through engineering on campus. And I think I interviewed at almost 20 different places. I got offered a job in the Yukon, with isolation pay, and, money was where it was at with regards to that particular option. But I'm from here, and I kept thinking, I love to travel, but I kept thinking every time I have vacation, I'm going to be traveling back to New Brunswick, which I love, but every vacation now, I would really like to go elsewhere and explore. So I was really holding out hope for the Department of Transportation. I'm old enough to call it the Department of Transportation. Everybody now calls it DTI. And I had an interview with them, and I just kept following up and showing my interest and representing what qualities I thought they would most be looking for and how I could represent them in a really good way. And I declined the other positions because I just kind of, wanted to take the island. So when you want to, burn the boats. And I was successful in achieving that job. And I landed the job and I was so happy, but it wasn't just because I, was really good at school or anything else. I had 1 year of previous experience in summer, and I just really was tenacious. And they close a door, you open the window. It's all of those qualities that kind of would keep pushing me through to where I wanted to go. And I didn't really know, okay, in the long run, I'm going to be the Eastern District Manager of StressCon. I really just was looking for what was available. StressCon wasn't hiring, neither was OSCO that summer or that year. And I knew I wanted to be local. So that was really my driving forces. And I got a job that essentially was a project manager for the Department of Transportation, and you were a floater. So you went in the districts that had the most infrastructure being built. And I started in Edmundston, New Brunswick, and I worked for a man who, is lovely, but really, I don't know if he was used to having someone such as myself working for him. I didn't feel respected. I can speak French, but I was not primarily French. I was young. I was inexperienced. I had blonde hair, pre-kids, and I was an engineer in construction and a girl. So I had a couple of knocks against me. And for all of those knocks, it made me realize I can't expect somebody else to educate me on what I need to know in this job or in life. And UMB gave me the foundation for my teachings, and the rest of it, I had to give myself real life education. And what I did is I just absorbed. I absorbed everything anybody with experience around me was willing to share. And the guys on the site were phenomenal. Some of them had worked there nearly 30, 40 years. I learned so much within the transportation industry that, I would build upon those building blocks and educate myself as much as I could, ask for education. When you invest in yourself, which I don't need to tell anybody who's gone to UMB, you're investing in your future. And I think that when we started moving, I then, because where the infrastructure went, I went down to Perth Andover and then eventually Fredericton. And then I worked out of the St. John offices. And I was put on some really large jobs. Blacks Harbor, there was an infrastructure there of $22 million that they put me on as essentially their project manager. We were called floater engineers. And it spanned over 2 years, and I did the job, and it was in 3 parts, 3 phases. And people with so much more experience were in the department, but they chose me to run that particular job, which for me was a huge success in my own life. And I think part of that whole transfer of skills and building upon them and taking on more than maybe my counterparts might have wanted to, because there were very long days, and at the Department of Transportation, it's public, so you can only make so much. You get paid 36.25 hours, or you can fight to get paid for 40, even though you're working 50 and 60, depending on what you're on. So it wasn't payment in terms of money, it was payment in terms of experience, and I was willing to take it. And that's what I wanted in my life at the time, especially. And again, I learned so much. The guys on site were, you take the good with the bad. Nothing is all easy for anybody. And, even with the bad, I always tell myself, where there's smoke, there's fire. They might just be a negative person, but I can learn a lot through that, because then I don't have to experience that negativity and I can use it to learn from. So I had spent almost 5 years trying to get a very standard template pushed through with the Department of Transportation, because we were all in separate districts, but newcomers, like new engineers coming on, didn't really have a booklet of templates to move from. And that's what I kept trying to kind of get mandated to, not recreate the wheel. And in my final year there, I was 5 years with DOT. I kind of finally felt traction with that particular thing. And I thought, oh, 5 years. I can't let my education and my brain allow 5 years to be the standard to get something changed. And I think that's when I first felt potentially that I might not be exactly where I needed to be for that next stage in my life. And I was approached by a recruitment agency. I wasn't looking for a job, because at DOT, I had the job. My parents were so excited that I had the job. It was, everybody wanted the government job. And here I am thinking it's not all it's cracked up to be. And the people there are glorious. They're amazing people. And when I was approached, they came in and said, I have an interview. I interviewed with our VP of concrete, who is now, but he was the GM at the time. And he explained a couple of different positions. And I said, it's contracts management or bust. And he said, well, you're pretty direct about that. And I said, I know what I want and I know where I want to go. And he hired me. The position had never been done before. It was brand new, not created. So I created the position, and it managed our project management team. And I took a team, I learned the process in a year. And then the next year I changed everything to have standards and templates, which is a love of mine, checklists, and then had a pretty successful building of the department over that 4 or 5 years. And then I went out on maternity leave, and I left and I said, I really would like to move along into something else. I feel like I've taken that where I can go and I can always do more. And I came back and I did some safety down in the plant, some safe work procedures, and then I was made our plant engineer, where I spent about another 6 years. And while working down in the plant, you overcome obstacles always, but it was tenacity and learning in life and knowing that the whole time, I want to make things better for the guys that work here, for my coworkers, for myself, Blaze a Trail. It was never about Blaze a Trail for a female for me. It was just always about, you know, Blaze a Trail for myself, and, you know, hopefully equality along the way just happens. As naive as that is, I'd like to think that my hard work and effort just speaks for itself. And then it must have, because I was offered the role of the Eastern District manager of StressCon. So I now manage our precast facilities and pipe facilities for New Brunswick and the New England states. And I've been doing that for about a year. And it's been wildly interesting, and it's really hard to summarize 20 years down to 15 minutes, but I think that's the best I can do. I can always focus on certain areas, but I focus more on the beginning because I feel like that's where you are at. And some of the biggest motivators and successes in my life has been knowing who I am and what my values are, because there's always, you know, a little compromise everywhere you go, but what are the things that you're willing to compromise and what are you not willing to compromise is, you know, who I've been. What you see is what you get. A little more transparent sometimes than I should be, but I would say that's it in a nutshell. And I know that when this was approached to me, I kind of thought, that's great. Allison Boyd is with me because I think she's wonderful and she's going to speak to her own, but we're like bookends. She's graduated in 20 and I graduated in 02. I'm the old bookend. She's the new one. Lucky girl. But I think that's all I've got for today, unless there's anything else.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I love how you focused on the beginning of your career and sort of showed us how you progressed throughout, because you're right, those joining us today are a lot of students and some new graduates. So I really, really loved how you talked about how you took the experience to absorb any information and any experiences that you could along the way. I think that's so important and so helpful to those joining us today. And also, I really loved your ambition and your drive that you went and you bought those boots on your way to the interview. I love that. That was awesome. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you. So now we are going to move on to our second speaker. As Rebecca mentioned, it's Allison Boyd, and she graduated just last year in 2020 with a degree in civil engineering from UMB, and she's now working as the contracts manager with StressCon. So in such a short time, she's gone on to a leadership role, which is very exciting. We're so happy for Allison and really looking forward to hearing your career story and how you sort of moved from UMB and CoOp into this role. So thank you for being here, Allison, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Natasha. So I did just graduate this past year in 2020. I don't quite have as much experience as Rebecca yet, but we're working on it. So I started after my second year. I did a co-op with DTI. You'll notice a lot of similarities between mine and Rebecca's stories here. So with DTI, I surveyed with them for a bit and then went back to school. After my third year, I got on with them again, but realized that I wanted some private experience as well as public experience. So I started applying to co-ops throughout that summer. I was unsuccessful for a while, and then all of a sudden I got a call from the UMB co-op coordinator. She said, there's this awesome opportunity in St. John. It's with StressCon. Why don't you submit an application? And sure enough, I had an interview with Rebecca. It went very well, I think. And then she hired me on as the co-op student, and it was a year-long co-op. StressCon, I was explained that StressCon didn't typically do a year-long at that point, so I was kind of a trial run. So I started in the lab with StressCon, and like Rebecca, tried to take all of the information I possibly could in. I really liked seeing all of the stuff that I was learning in class in an actual workplace setting. That made so many things actually make sense and click to me. And then after I was in the lab, I moved to their quality control department. And quality control can be a little difficult if you don't quite understand the big picture. And I think I did a good job recognizing that. And I'm really not afraid to ask anybody questions when I need to. So I would ask our plant manager kind of like, hey, like, I know this has to go here, but why? And in doing that, I learned a lot and kind of made good connections with the foreman, all the crews, and kind of just anybody in the plant. I thought that my questions may have been annoying them, but in the big picture, I think the questions really really got the job done well, which is something that means a lot to me. So after quality control, StressCon moved me kind of all over the place just to kind of understand how everything operates and everything works at StressCon. So I saw planning and scheduling. I worked in the yard for a bit. I kind of organizing load lists and doing shipping and all of that stuff. And then I also worked in their stores for a little bit, working with our person who works in stores doing supply chain management stuff. So I kind of understood how everything ran at StressCon. So once I had that kind of foundation of knowledge, they moved me into a project management position. And as a student, I kind of had some smaller jobs, but that was okay because I was learning. And in that project management role, I used my knowledge that I had learned in the plant, in the lab, in the scheduling position, the yard position, the stores position. I really found that knowing all of those positions really benefited my project management position because I knew who to call for what. I knew everybody, so I wasn't afraid to call. I just had no, it helped me a lot. So after my year-long co-op with StressCon, I returned to school for my final year. I actually collaborated with StressCon for my team design project. So we never really fell out of touch at all. But when COVID hit, there were no openings at StressCon because I feel like every business was just completely scrambled. And so there were no openings at that time, but we did maintain communication. So in that time, I applied to a research job with UMB and worked under one of my former profs. We worked doing research on different ways COVID affected construction sites and how drones can be used to make 3D models, which was a very cool experience. And then during my time at UMB, I got a call from StressCon and they reached out offering me their contracts manager position. And it was a little bit intimidating at first because the contracts manager position was my boss when I was a project manager. So the contracts manager manages all of the project managers. And that can be a little intimidating when you're first coming out of school, but they did. StressCon, Rebecca, my boss, Brendan, they both explained to me that they kind of gave me a breakdown of what I'd be learning, when I'd be learning it, when I would gain certain responsibilities, and it kind of gave me the confidence boost to take on the role. And now I'm in the role, I'm loving it. I'm learning so much all the time. I still kind of have that drive to ask questions when I don't understand something, because it is really, really, really important to learn what you don't know, because it will benefit you down the road. I hope. I'm still on the road, but yeah. So my story isn't quite as long as Rebecca's. I still work with her standards and templates, updating them occasionally because things do change over time. But yeah, that is my story.
Thank you, Allison. That was so great to hear. And it's so exciting. Congratulations to you for in such a short time going from co-op to this position. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. So you should be very proud. And you raised some great questions or some great comments about asking questions every time you can and really embracing opportunities to learn even more and to speak up when you might not know the answer. I think that's definitely something that all of us can learn from and can take on in all of our careers. So with that being said, if anyone has questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. Since we've now heard from Rebecca and from Allison, we are going to move on to the Q&A period. We had some great questions submitted to you. from you in advance. So we will start with those. And we're going to add in everyone here. So I would like to say that joining us for this Q&A portion, we also have another proud UMB alumna, Camilla Ugart. And Camilla works at OSCO Construction Group as the corporate recruiter. So if anyone has questions that might be more HR related, she'll be able to hopefully help answer some of your questions or connect with you afterwards if she can't answer them today. So thank you, Camilla, for being here with us as well. It's so exciting to have the three of you provide your perspective as well. So this is great. So let's dive right into some of the questions that were pre-submitted to us. And let's start with this one here. I think might be applicable for you, Allison, just where you just talked about coming right out of school. So someone asked if you think that being involved in school communities and volunteering will help you with sort of the job search and honing those technical skills, or if you think that just having the technical skills and the education is enough to sort of get your foot in the door. Do you have any perspective on that?
In my experience, it's the technical skills mean a lot in an interview. Like if you're interviewing and you can tell them that you've had that experience and done that, or maybe did a lab on it in school to get that experience, that's definitely helpful and beneficial. As far as volunteer experience goes, I would have to throw that down to Camilla because I know that I do have some volunteer experience on my resume, but I'm not quite sure if how much that's looked at in the hiring process.
Right. Yeah, Rebecca, did you want to add anything, or Camilla?
Well, just from a recruiting standpoint, I think we always look at those transferable skills, and we like to look at individuals who don't typically follow the status quo, so that they do things where you could look at opportunities and be like, that's a perspective we've never looked at, or that's an experience where they might be able to apply it and we might be able to look at things differently. So I certainly, from my standpoint, I like looking at those extracurricular or volunteer opportunities because it really enhances and complements somebody's profile, not just the technicality of the skills that they have. So it's always nice when you're able to leverage that and think, okay, we're looking at somebody who, yes, has excelled academically or has some of the relevant experience that we look for, but it's always nice when that can be further supported and complemented by elements that show you that they have the interpersonal skills that would complement a team or add to your dynamic. So I think there's merit in involving yourself in those areas because it really just highlights you as an individual and what you can bring to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if there are some engineering students here with us on the call, a good place to start might be with like your undergraduate society and maybe seeing if there's some opportunities there to get involved in the field and with the university. So like Camilla said, it doesn't hurt to have those extra things on your resume. So that's great. Thank you so much, Allison and Camilla. And so another question that we had come in was, when you're applying for jobs, did you, like when Allison and Rebecca, when you were applying for jobs, did you find that having professional connections was useful for you? Did you kind of grab onto those professional connections that you had to get your foot in the door?
I didn't have any. I grew up in a family that was, my dad was an insurance adjuster and my mother sold insurance. So I had no idea really what construction was. I really had no connections. So I guess for me, I couldn't leverage anything. All I could leverage was being, a bother to the recruiting agent. And I just I sent her an email. I forwarded her, a couple little captions. Like I tried every avenue. I tried to be funny. I tried to be very serious and, beyond being absolutely like obsessive about it, I was to the point and, hopefully trying not to be detrimental in the process, but I feel like it worked. And she later had kind of said, "You're the only person that has ever sent me a joke," and I was like, but I stood out, right? And I do think that even based on the last question, it's a little bit of a standout feature that if you can offer something that everybody's got a degree, everybody had summer experience, what else do you bring to the table? It might set you apart in just enough for somebody to call you to have an interview. And an interview is different than obviously your resume. You know, if you get your foot in the door, do not waste the interview moment.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you so much. And Allison, would you have anything to add to that from your experience?
No, my experience again is pretty similar to Rebecca's. I have no engineers in the family. I didn't have any engineering connections prior to getting my job with DTI, and then yeah, so no, Rebecca kind of said it all.
Perfect. Well, that's great. So we do have a couple of questions that came in that might be a little bit more HR focused for you, Camilla. We had someone ask if you are hiring students from the business faculty as well in any of these sort of positions. Like I know there's management positions within StressCon or within OSCO Construction Group. Is the business faculty a focus as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what's great about our organization, you hear the word construction, I think sometimes your focus goes to specific areas, but I graduated from Renaissance College with a focus in leadership, and I got a job as a recruiter. So we're always looking for opportunities to engage students and kind of think whether their disciplines kind of complement the work that we do here. Now, a focus for us is very much on an alignment to ensure that if we do engage in an opportunity with them, it's mutually beneficial. So we want to make sure that what we offer is a reflection of what you look for in a position, but also a reflection of your skill set and your kind of areas of competence and comfort. So absolutely, we look at a variety of disciplines in terms of opportunities within our company, because we don't just have this concrete side, the steel side, the construction side, we have the corporate side as well. And I'd like to think that we're a kind of a key player in we're the glue that holds all those other units together. We're very important. So we always look for individuals who can really complement that side as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's great. We did have another question related to hiring, and it's a little bit more specific, but I will ask you, Camilla. So they're curious how they can access engineering and design opportunities within OSCO Construction Group, especially in the area of piping.
Oh, no, absolutely. So what we've been doing, and I'm sure this is new news to everybody, but we've kind of done a strategic and intense recruitment process where we've tried to source top talents coming from universities. With applicable positions, if there are opportunities, we typically post. But what I like to do and encourage students to do is to always connect with me, because if we engage in a conversation, we kind of go through our initial processes, so our initial assessments. It's always nice to be able to develop that rapport at the onset, even if those opportunities aren't there, because the moment those opportunities come up, then I know who you are, I know what you bring to the table, and I can immediately present you in front of our managers and say, listen, this might be an individual of interest. With respect to design, 100%. I would encourage you to contact me directly, and we can kind of talk a little bit more about those opportunities. In our immediate roster, we don't have those opportunities available, but we're always looking to the future and forecasting as much as we can. So there's no harm in reaching out, and we can kind of develop that initial rapport. I can understand you better. And as soon as those opportunities come up, my managers, and Rebecca will nod her head to this, love it when I say, I have these individuals in the pipeline. I know everything about them. Here they are right in front of you immediately. Let's connect with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that, Camilla. And I think just another point on that too, and it kind of leads back into the last question, is take advantage of like platforms like 10,000 Coffees to reach out to people who might be working in fields that you're interested in. So if you scan the list of alumni in 10,000 Coffees and there's someone working in, the piping industry, perhaps that's a way to start a conversation. But again, also reaching out to companies directly, like Camilla said, I think that's fantastic. So we do have a couple questions that are popping up live in the chat, so I will get to one of those. Somebody asked, what was the biggest challenge for you when you were shifting from academia to the industry mindset? So this would be a question for you, Rebecca and Allison.
For me, I would say one of the biggest challenges is that sometimes, you have different challenges from people's expectations, and you're going to get kind of twofold. There's going to be the people that just think, oh, you think you know it all because you have a degree, and they take that approach with you. And it's the biggest challenge for me was to overcome their stereotype of me, and through that you have to be consistent, you have to be transparent, consistent, direct, and have integrity, and just consistently show, I want to learn from you. Even though you're being dismissive, I still want to learn from you. And when they start to realize, that your intentions are for a good reason, I think then they start to kind of like break down their walls and allow you to learn from them. And then on the opposite side of things, I found that there are people that expect the world from you, and why don't you know everything already in this role, and you should just get it. And in those cases, you just have to be tenacious about being resourceful. If something changes, pivot with it. And adaptability would probably be one of what I think are my greatest strengths, and you should know your strengths and which strength to use at the right time. So for me, that was the biggest thing from changing to an academia. It's all on you. It's so independent and not as many outside forces affecting you. So you could study when you wanted to, organize yourself when you wanted to, and you didn't have to be reactive to everybody else's pressures and expectations and deadlines. And so, that adaptability for me was one of my greatest strengths.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Allison, did you have any?
So, yeah, very similar to Rebecca again. I guess the biggest challenge for me after I graduated going into the industry was I kind of had this mindset that I have a degree now, I should know everything. That's not the case at all. Like, it's just not. You should ask the questions, you should get the information. If you don't know something, ask somebody. Somebody wants to help you, because in the end, you're all kind of working towards the same goal. And when you ask the questions, it's going to be done correctly. So you don't have to know everything coming out of your engineering degree. There's lots of teachers in the workplace.
For sure. That's great advice. Thank you so much, Allison. There is another question that popped up in the chat. So someone has asked, how is the company culture in empowering young engineers without much experience? I think that's a great question. And I think you probably both have good perspective on this, but maybe Allison, being a fresh young engineer, you might want to jump on that question.
Absolutely. Rebecca is my trailblazer. I feel so empowered. We have good conversations about being females in engineering. I feel support from everybody around me all the time. It's awesome. I have a really good group of people working with me and supporting me and making sure I kind of have the tools I need to succeed. And yeah, it's pretty great.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah, I think that's such an important thing too, when you're starting in a new company, like you need to have that positive atmosphere and feel like you're being supported. So it's great to hear that that you feel that way, Allison.
It is great to hear. Thank you, Allison.
Yeah, especially for your boss.
From my perspective on that same question, I love hearing this answer from Allison because I witnessed it almost 15 years ago. And I think our company definitely drives people in the right direction. They want the right culture, the right fit. But when I started, it wasn't always that way. I mean, the company always wanted it, but I think you still have a culture of the company has been around for decades and there is growth, but there's mindsets and, you have challenges. And I do a lot of interviews with onboarding people. And one of the things that I often say is that StressCon can be a difficult place to work by the fact that it is manufacturing and construction. And then you're put into these positions that have varying different types of personalities. And, you separate the men from the boys and the girls from the women is what I often say. And that's not always easy. You have moments where you feel not not the most energetic, not the most inspired, not the most, and it's those moments where you have to dig deeper and realize, you know, you are trailblazing, and not just for young women, but for everybody, to change the culture, to support young engineers, to support young workers, no matter who's onboarded here. I want people to realize that we have respect, we want respect, and, you know, but you need to want more than one person to move a mountain. And, you know, I'm just creating my bookends, you know, it's great. It's lovely. So I'm really glad to hear that that's the perspective, because I've worked really hard to try to be a part of that change. And, but I've seen it the other way and in other places. You know, when I was on site, it was not that easy. I did not have support sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I think when you told your career story, you kind of talked about some of those hurdles along the way too. So it is so great to hear, Allison, that like you're having such a positive experience right from your education. So that's really fantastic. This question might be a little bit trickier just based on both of your career stories. Someone's asking what the best way is to get experience for the jobs in their field. I know you both sort of, I guess, kind of jumped right in, but I think you talked a lot, specifically you, Rebecca, about, you know, starting at the beginning and working your way up to where you wanted to be. So would you have any advice for someone who's maybe just starting out and they're trying to get that experience in the field?
Yes, absolutely. I did start as a quality control inspector my summer previous, and when I started with DOT, it was project management, which was a pretty good job, but it was about beating the feet and educating yourself. So I would, and now you guys have YouTube. I didn't have YouTube, but YouTube is free, and I can learn so much. People motivate me in the morning and they help me fall asleep at night. It's wonderful. And, you know, being able to log on and just pull the education towards you in some areas where you want to get experience. So when you come to an interview or you push to get another job, you're kind of showing your experience. There are a lot of people that come here with no experience, or they come with just being on site experience. So even if you are a laborer for a company that we sell precast to that is erecting it, that's experience in the field. We currently have a co-op student here who started as a laborer this past summer. He applied for co-op. We already had them filled. So he took a role as a laborer in our plant and worked as a laborer for the whole summer. And when a co-op position opened up, he applied for it and I interviewed him, and he had a great interview. And we hired him as a co-op student. He's getting similar education through the co-op program that Allison had. And he's phenomenal. But we wouldn't have been able to get him, and he wouldn't have known, yes, I want to work here longer. So it opened up a door for him that didn't exist earlier, but he was willing to take the experience as a laborer, which is not an easy job. It's a very difficult job. Slinging concrete is very difficult. So it worked out well for him. And to me, that's one of the best experiences of, you can't get an engineering job, educate yourself through the process, be around it, witness things. He asked me one of the best questions I've ever been asked in an interview. So, you know, for me, that all spoke extremely well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. May we ask what the best question was during the interview?
Sure. He had worked here for the summer, and he said, you know, I've noticed that you onboard a lot of laborers at once and you have a high turnover. Can I just ask, like, what you guys do with that? How do you deal with that? And, you know, I was impressed. He looked beyond himself. He wasn't just task oriented. He did the task extremely well, but he was looking beyond that. And he was looking at it from a point of view of, how could I improve that? Not just, what do he wasn't saying it in an offending way. He just said, what do you do about that? Not like, why do you have turnover? You know, it was very thought out and productive.
Yeah, we get a lot of questions from people, and there was one submitted, which is why I asked you that, about interviews. And Camilla, this might be a question for you. And like, sort of, what are those key questions that you should be asking the organization to make sure that not only you're a proper fit for the company, but that you're showing that you're educated and you've done your research.
I think nothing drives us more bananas than when we ask a student, do you have any questions for us? And they say no, because now's the time to ask. Now's the time to engage. And it also shows your interest in a company. We don't expect you to know what we do through and through. Of course, being prepared about the organization to an extent is always helpful, but the question portion is a way for us to really gauge your interest in the company and really to ask some questions that you're kind of thirsty to know the answer for. Like, we've had, what I love when students ask is like, what's a day in the life for you in that role? Or what are some of the hurdles, or what does the training process look like? But Jay's question, sorry, our co-op student's question was brilliant, because he noticed things as a within his, when he worked as a laborer, and he wanted to know, like, what's our process? How does turnover affect us? How do we engage? How do we rectify that? Because that shows us that you're really engaged in the business and interested to know our processes, and interested to know how you can what you can do to support us in that respect. So always come prepared with at least a couple questions, because it really kind of enhances that experience, and it just shows us that you're really, really interested in knowing more.
For sure. Perfect. Thank you. I do have a couple more questions for you, Camilla. We've had some people ask, what are some current opportunities in mechanical engineering or in other engineering roles within the company?
That's so funny, because one of our, at StressCon, and actually our former contracts manager is a mechanical engineer alum from UMB. His name's Brendan Clancy. He's our operations manager now. So I don't want us to set a precedent that's only specific to civil. I mean, I think what we do is we look at all engineering disciplines, and we try to think about, one, where's the relevancy, but two, what haven't we thought about before? I know a focus for us now too is looking more at industrial and mining engineering. We haven't done that before, but if we look at how the construction industry evolves, we want to be, actually our vice president at StressCon says we want to be on the leading edge and not the bleeding edge. So to be able to forecast in advance and think about what does innovation look like, and what do we need to do to get there, and diversifying our workforce and not just focusing on one discipline, is really kind of an initiative that we've taken moving forward. There are numerous opportunities. I mean, and what I mean by that is, we don't want to present that it's only kind of siloed to one discipline of engineering. We look at multiple. And if it's an area we haven't considered before, we really engage in really examining that, because we think, okay, are we dropping the ball somewhere where we really should be focusing our efforts? And also, you don't want individuals who all think the same way in one place. You have to have variety, because that's what stimulates growth and creativity, right? So we always look for, we always think outside the box in terms of our recruitment and where we kind of orient our focus. I hope that's answered your question.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And just to go off that, is there a place that OSCO posts any of their current job opportunities? Is it on your own website, or?
It's on our website, but that website is kind of linked to job search engines like Indeed, Job Bank, Career Beacon. We also like to post through the university's career services page. So if we think that there is an opportunity where we'd like to engage soon to be graduates, we like to post in that forum, because we know that students often rely on that as a source of looking to see what's available or what's coming out down the pipeline. So we use numerous forums, but the best bet would be our company website.
Perfect. Okay. Yes. And just to go off that, you raised a good point about the UMB Job Bank. So for anyone who isn't aware of that resource, it's available for all students and alumni. And it has job postings, like Camilla said, from various organizations, not just in New Brunswick, across the country, various industries. So definitely check that out. And I should be able to put a link in this chat as well for that. So thank you for that reminder. Rebecca, we had someone ask you, they really liked your recommendation about using YouTube. And they're wondering how you would suggest to reflect any knowledge that they might have gained from YouTube on their resume. Is that something that you think someone could do?
I think that how they could reflect on it is maybe not reference YouTube. You get kind of the opportunity to show what you are in an interview, but kind of reflect on the information that you feel you've learned, and maybe write a dynamo entrance letter, you know, kind of something that kind of shows a little bit more of, I've done a little educating. This is, you know, where my forte is, you know, really kind of drive home some points. With respect to YouTube, I mean, I mention it because it's free. It's a resource you can tap into. And, you know, I am a huge believer in, if you're not growing, you're dying. So educate yourself in any way you can. The library has free books. You know, there's so many things that you can tap into nowadays that I think you should just constantly be willing to absorb and learn. So the moment that finally comes up and you get the call and they say, do you have steel toe boots? Yep, I do. So that's the moment, because you'll be better able to pivot, to react, to be able to kind of understand the request and know whether or not you can meet it. And you're not always going to, like what Allison kind of referred to, you're not always going to have all the experience, but with Allison, we knew she was the right fit. And she was the right fit because every time, every obstacle, every option, every, you know, opening that we offered her, she said yes. You know, she said, yes, I'll buy the steel toe boots. I'm on my way, kind of. And there is a huge amount of success in that, I think, for any individual, not just in our organization, that if you're willing to go out of your comfort zone, push yourself beyond your fears, because everybody has them, just be more of yourself than yesterday. And I think that's what's going to kind of shine through. You're going to get the call because you're going to approach people in the right way. You're going to get the interview. You're going to get the job. You just have to keep thinking that way.
For sure. Thank you for that, Rebecca. And you raised a really good point. I think it's great advice to sort of use maybe any of that YouTube experience or knowledge that you've gained to talk about in an interview or in your cover letter versus having it in your resume and using that as some sort of conversation points. I think that's a really great suggestion. I don't know, Camilla, if you might have any other advice around that or experience where people have used information like that during an interview.
Yeah, I always prefer I mean, when it comes to your resume really has to complement what we're looking for in an opportunity, right? And add to that. But if you're looking for a touch point, that the interview process is the best way to kind of present that, because it shows how you went above and beyond, as Rebecca mentioned, to really enhance and add to your learning. It shows that you are engaged. Just not specific to OSCO, but I just remember when I used to work as an employment counselor, I was helping one of my clients apply as a job as a baker, and he brought with him his phone and he had a YouTube link to some of the pastries he had created, and it was just incredible. It was just a beautiful resource to have to complement his abilities. So I think throughout the interview process, that's your selling point. That's when you can really be like, and I also did, or this is how I go above and beyond to really educate myself and enhance my qualities.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. We do have one other question, and I think just to check the time, yeah, we're about 5 minutes. So let's answer this last question, which is, how can I stand out to some of the more bigger or established firms like OSCO? What are some of the ways that you can really stand out when, you know, there's a lot of new graduates or young alumni who are all looking for jobs?
This is totally an HR question, but I will tell you on my resume, and when she filters things to me, I mean, I printed my resume on, this is old school. I printed it on a different type of paper. Like it was blue. It stood out. It was a light blue. You know, I didn't want it getting lost. And so when I called up the recruiter the day after I submitted it, I said, you know, go to the blue one, you know, go to the blue one, look towards that light, you know, and you have to make yourself stand out. A resume is not the only way, but a resume has to be clean. It has to be right. Do not have grammatical errors in it. Spell things properly. It has to be right, but it is not, it's just the first step, in my opinion. Camilla.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't know, Allison, if you had anything you might want to add from your experience or.
No, I don't think so. I did all mine virtually.
Okay. No worries.
But no
Camilla,
spelling errors.
no spelling errors. That's important. Yeah, absolutely. Camilla, I don't know if you had anything to add to that question or if Rebecca covered.
Yeah, she covered it beautifully. I always love a cover letter, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but your resume is where you can be factual and to the point. Your cover letter is your personal plea to the organization. That's where you sell yourself on a personal level. And I hate using the word sell yourself, but that's essentially what you're doing with a resume. Really, what makes you stand out for me is when I engage with a student and you can tell through and through they love what they're doing. It's passion really is going to be your selling point, because if you are engaged and just live and breathe what it is that you're applying for and or your field of interest, that comes out through the kind of pre-screening process, and you think, my word, I really want to get that person on board. Because if we have passionate people, that spills into the quality of the work that you produce, that spills into the environment that you cultivate and the relationships that you're able to establish. So be passionate and engaged in your learning. We're not all extroverted individuals. I fortunately am, but not everybody is. But whether you're extroverted or introverted, your passion is going to come through regardless. Focus on that, because that's what's going to set you apart from everybody else.
For sure. Thank you. That's such great advice. I think everyone probably everyone here is very passionate about a career in engineering, whether they're studying it or they're looking for a change. So I really appreciate you sharing that, Camilla. I think that's fantastic. So we are at the end of our questions, which is amazing. Thank you everyone for all the great questions. If it was pre-submitted or you submitted it today, that was a really fantastic discussion. And I just want to say a huge thank you to our alumni panelists, Allison, Rebecca, and Camilla. Thank you so much for being here today. We truly couldn't do these events without you, and we are so appreciative. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Fantastic. So for those of you who are tuning in today, thank you again for joining us. If you didn't have your question answered, feel free to reach out to me if there is anything that you wanted to address, and I'll be happy to share it with our panelists to see if they have any suggestions or advice for you. We also have recorded this session, so we will be sending you all a recording that you can rewatch if you wanted to hear their stories again or remind yourself of any of the answers to the questions. So keep an eye on your emails for that. For those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more, as you'll see on the screen, we have some upcoming events, both from the Alumni Office and the Career Development Center. So there is one tomorrow with TD Banking on careers in banking. We have one coming up next week on boosting your financial health. So that might be of interest to some people here. And also next month, we have our third office hour event with 10,000 copies, which is on careers in business. So with JD Irving Limited, we're happy to have them on board next month. So again, thank you so much for everyone for being here today. Thank you to our alumni panelists. This was a fantastic discussion, and we hope you all have a really great day. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.